Yeah, we back. Now, before I get started, I just want to say currently right now, my phone is broken. So if you cannot get in contact with me, if you cannot get in touch with me, my phone is broken. So I got to get a new phone, maybe tomorrow, sometime this weekend. So email me if we communicate on a regular basis, because I'm probably going to lose some numbers. So go ahead, email me your number. So when I get my phone back up and running, everything is all good. Now, today's video is going to be a follow-up video to the one I dropped last night in regards to Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and in regards to the projected rising birth rate on the continent and the current collapse of the birth rates in Western countries. And I made the comparison between Bill Gates and Elon Musk, both billionaire technocrats. Elon Musk, he's focused mainly on boosting the white population, the European population. He wants white women to have more babies, more white children. That's why guys like Elon Musk on the conservative side of the spectrum, they want to, get rid of abortion, get rid of access to birth control for white women so they can boost the European population. And on the other side, Bill Gates, also a Western technocrat, but he's more on the liberal side, but he also has a similar objective, but they go about it in different ways. Whereas Elon Musk, he's more on the defensive side, right? He's more about defending the borders, making sure the non-white immigrants don't come over the border, and opening the door for the white immigrants to come into the country to boost the numbers. And on top of that, he wants white women to have more children. And Bill Gates, on the other side, he invests his money in making sure that women in other nations, specifically African nations, with a projected rising birth rate, which is expected to double and triple in upcoming decades over the next century, he wants to decrease the population over there, right? He wants to invest his money in subsidizing birth control and contraceptives and making sure that the women in the African villages are not having 3, 4, 5 children. And Elon Musk, on the other hand, he wants white women in the West to have more children, right? More children, have more babies. Bill Gates, he wants black women, less children, no babies, right? And of course, when it comes to Bill Gates, he dresses this up as philanthropy, as charity, as I'm just doing this because I'm a generous individual. I just want what's best for you because I love you, right? But in reality, we know that he is doing this to maintain the security and the longevity of Western supply chains, especially in the arena of technology, which depends on having cheap access to raw materials and certain natural resources. And we know that a large population on the continent that is consuming those resources instead of shipping them out for cheap to Western supply chains, that's going to have a negative effect on technocrats like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and even just the average everyday citizen living in the West, right? The price of an iPhone is going to quadruple. The price of a car is going to quadruple. Electronics, just the price of energy is going to quadruple. In general, the quality of life for citizens living in the West is going to decrease very rapidly if Africa begins to harness its own natural resources, and instead of shipping them out for cheap, instead it gets used for the benefit of the local population, right? That's going to have a negative effect on the power structure as it's currently set up right now. So guys like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, government officials, Western foreign policy advisors, guys like that, when it comes to the topic of birth rates, this topic is a very hot topic behind closed doors, right? Behind closed doors, it's a very hot topic. That's why the other day, Elon Musk went on social media and he had posted this photo, the state of global fertility. And it showed that the African continent, is booming in terms of reproduction, right? And you see Europe, the United States is currently in population decline. And I showed you a bunch of tweets where he was, complaining and saying, oh my God, Western civilization is going to collapse because of the birth rates, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, check out that video. And I'm going to be responding to some comments in my comment section because I want to continue the conversation, right? This person came into my comment section. Now, I don't know if this is a black woman or it could be a white man hiding behind an image of a black cartoon character. But anyways, they came into my comment section and said this: yes, the birth rate in Africa should decline. Do not have kids if you cannot provide for them. The children will suffer. Now, like I said, like the diagnosis I gave in my last video, right? So she made the diagnosis that children are suffering. She said that the children are going to suffer. So what I would say is I would ask her or him or whoever this is, why are the children suffering? Let's get to the root cause, right? Let's act as if we are a medical doctor giving a diagnosis and a plan of treatment for a patient for their recovery, right? So let's say I am Dr. Antonor Furman and you have come into my medical office for treatment, right? You are suffering from internal bleeding, okay? So Guys like Bill Gates, guys like Elon Musk, and individuals like this person in my comment section. If somebody comes into your medical office with internal bleeding, you're trying to tell me that the solution for that medical issue is to provide a blood transfusion. If you walk into the ER with internal bleeding, right? Is the doctor going to give you a blood transfusion and then send you back home? And then when you come back next week, he's going to give you another blood transfusion for the internal bleeding that's still happening? Do you think that's a effective long-term solution for internal bleeding? Because that's what's happening economically on the continent. Internal bleeding economically, right? Internal bleeding, right? So we are suffering from internal bleeding. Now, first you have to identify the root issue of the symptoms when a patient comes into your office. So what is the root cause of this internal bleeding? I mentioned it in the last video. Resource extraction, cheap resource extraction. So the resources that could be used to feed the people and house the people and sustain the people, the cobalt, the coltan, the gold, the oil, the uranium, the agriculture, it's being shipped off to foreign countries for cheap, right? For the benefit of Western investors and their citizens. That is the root cause of the internal bleeding. Now, when you tell me the solution to that is to provide contraceptives to African women, you are a janky doctor, especially when the same people preaching to you about how you need contraceptives are the same ones preaching to their own women to have more children. They're telling their women you need to have more babies, and they're telling our women you need to have less babies. So somebody's grifting, somebody's scamming, somebody's running a scam. If somebody comes into your medical office with internal bleeding, you're supposed to stop the bleeding. That's the first line of defense. Stop the damn bleeding. I don't know why people can't understand this. I don't know why. Like, am I crazy? Like that I can see this and other people can't? Like, how come this is not obvious? The internal bleeding is caused by cheap resource extraction to the benefit of foreign corporations and foreign countries, as well as a lack of industrialization. Because when certain economies are dependent on the fact that you are a cheap extraction site for raw materials, even the thought of you industrializing represents a threat to their economic interests, represents a threat to their livelihood and their prosperity and their future, right? So they'll do everything and anything to stop your industrialization and your progress and keep you remaining as a cheap extraction site, which means that they benefit from your internal bleeding, which means they benefit from your disease, right? So they have no benefit, they have no incentive to eliminate the disease, right? At best, they'll give you a cheap and effective way to stall it out, right? Which is the blood transfusion, right? You're bleeding out, you're dying slowly, but I'm going to give you a blood transfusion because I benefit from the fact that you're dying slowly, right? Now, the other side of the argument, more so on the Elon Musk, the conservative side, they're worried about the birth rates also, but they're more so focused on their demographics, right? Maintaining the majority, right? So they don't want a bunch of non-white immigrants, bulldozing over the border, right? So they also want to decrease the population because in their mind, less babies equals less migrants. So guys like Elon Musk, they want to boost their numbers and consolidate the demographic majority. Guys like Bill Gates, they want to actively decrease our demographics, right? But both of them are both men of European descent, both white men who share similar interests, which is maintaining the prosperity and dominance of Western industry and Western supply chains, which means that they want cheap access to what we have at our table and they want to keep us away from their table, right? So for example, take a look up on the screen. We have everything we need at our table. We have an abundance at our table to feed all the children on the continent plus more. I said in the video yesterday, whether a man wants to have 2 children or 20 children, we have enough to feed all those children. We have an abundance, the creator, the most high, whatever you want to call him, he decided to bless us with an abundance, and we have an abundance to feed all the children we need, right? As long as the resources are distributed in an efficient manner, listen, the babies will never go hungry. Now, here's the reality. Due to the fact that the world is set up to where the continent is designated as a cheap resource extraction site, you have this illusion that is created to where, take a look up on the screen. We believe that we don't have enough at our table. Why? Because the things that are naturally at our table, they're being carted off and they're being sent to this other guy's table. Take a look up on the screen. So his children are eating, fruits and berries and chicken and steak and all that good stuff. And our children, we're being made to believe that we don't have enough at our table. So we believe the solution is, instead of taking back what naturally belongs to us and hoarding it at our table, we have people that believe that we need to eliminate the children from our table altogether. What? So you mean to tell me they get to keep extracting the raw materials? They get to keep eating good and living lovely. And what we have to do, we have to accommodate them by decreasing the amount of children at our table. While meanwhile, they're boosting the children at their table and they're eating lovely and they're enjoying abundance. That's the solution? That is the metaphor I made. That is the equivalent of someone coming into the hospital about to die with internal bleeding, and instead of clamping the artery, stopping the bleeding, what you want to do is you want to give him a blood transfusion without stopping the bleeding. So he's still going to be bleeding, right? But you just want to give him a blood transfusion to prolong the suffering, essentially. So meanwhile, like I said, the only people that benefit is the Western investors, the Western citizens, the Western supply chains. And the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to be less children at our table. It's going to be more children at their table, and they're going to keep eating good. And, you know, look at them eating steak and eating turkey and chicken, and look at them happy in abundance. And look at our children angry and upset, right? So instead of taking back what belongs to us, we have people that want to say, you know what? We need to eliminate those children off the table altogether. What? Hell no. Here's where it's really just diabolical, right? So, like I mentioned in the video yesterday, whenever you do have a leader that steps out of the shadows and is patriotic and is making an effort to actually improve the condition of his people, right? These same people who are telling us we need to have less children, they're going to undermine the efforts of that individual. They're going to undermine the efforts of that leader. Like I said, just 2 weeks ago, we saw a big scandal in the news where the French government, one of their intelligence agents currently right now still is detained in custody in Mali on charges of conspiracy to overthrow the government. So going back to the medical comparison that I made, right? You have a patient that comes into the hospital with internal bleeding, right? So you have the president of Mali, President Assimi Goïta. He's the surgeon, right? We're going to stop the bleeding, right? I'm the surgeon, you know, Assimi Goïta, he's in the room, he's in the operating room. He is stopping the bleeding, right? He's in the artery, you know, stitching up the artery. And here come these people. They knocking the scalpel out of his hand, right? Meanwhile, he's trying to close the wound. He's trying to stop the bleeding, right? But they're trying to undermine his efforts because they benefit from the bleeding, right? So whenever a patriotic leader, a surgeon, comes around to stitch up the bleeding, they're going to undermine his efforts. They're going to knock the scalpel out of his hand. They're going to distract them, right? They're going to try to assassinate the surgeon, right? And then you already know how they finance and boost up the corrupt leaders that work for their interests. That's basically like trying to bribe the corrupt doctors to keep the wound open, right? Don't stop the bleeding. Keep the wound open because we benefit from it. So don't worry about the bleeding, right? Just give them the birth control and the blood transfusion and things like that. Of course, it never gets to the root issue, right? So what they want to do is they want to keep the wound open. They want to keep the internal bleeding continuing. They want to have a bunch of corrupt doctors on payroll, on staff to keep the wound open, to keep the bleeding continuing. And whenever a surgeon comes around to stop the bleeding, they're going to assassinate the surgeon. And then they turn around and try to convince you that the root cause of your issues, the real cause of your problems, is not cheap resource extraction, exploitation, and lack of industrialization. No, the root cause is you having too many babies, especially too many, young boys who will probably grow up to be soldiers and leaders who will actually, fight us directly head on. You need to have less of those, right? You need to have less, right? We need to have more. You need to have less. And we need to keep hoarding and extracting the raw materials. Why? Because we plan to have more babies. So because we're going to have more babies, we need to keep extracting the raw materials to sustain our children and our future generations. So in order to make this a reality, you need to accommodate us and have less babies, right? You need to have less babies, less military age men, a smaller consumer base, a smaller workforce, and we're going to be doing the opposite of all that. We're going to be boosting all that, and we need you to accommodate us and decrease that to make our lives easier. Now, I want to respond to another comment that I got in my comment section. This person said this: "You have misunderstood Bill Gates. He is a true philanthropist, and he has vowed to donate all of his money to important causes over the next 20 years. He made some mistakes in Africa in the past, but I believe he really wants a more balanced world. One of his daughters married a brown man, and the youngest daughter was dating a black guy." Like I said, he has done this to empower women, right? We're doing this to uplift the African woman. That's how he dresses it up, right? But out of all the years that we have heard about Bill Gates dumping his money in this project and that project, has that materially changed the conditions of the African woman on a tangible level that can be felt and measured and seen? Of course not, because charity and subsidy and dependency does not lead to long-term empowerment, right? It just turns you into a charity case that is waiting for handouts, but it's not really truly empowering, right? If you want to empower the African woman, right, That would mean industrialization. That would mean access to education and healthcare, real healthcare, not just, throw me an IUD and then send me off into the wolves. And I don't even have access to the first class, medical systems of the United States and the Western world to where if I have a side effect or something goes wrong, I can actually get it treated, right? So you give the woman in the village an IUD and you send her off. And if she has side effects, who is she going to call? Where is she going to go? She's going to die. But of course, guys like Bill Gates and guys who are obsessed with the birth rates, they don't really want that because that would actually stop the bleeding. They don't really want to stop the bleeding. That's the thing. Stopping the bleeding would undermine their position. So they don't want to stop the bleeding. Truly empowering the African woman like he claims to do would actually be stopping the bleeding. But stopping the bleeding goes against their economic and geopolitical interests. So they have no incentive in doing that. So unfortunately for you, brother, or, whoever you are, you unfortunately have fell for the propaganda. You have fell for the grift. You have fell for the Bill Gates grift. Why? Because his daughter was dating a black guy? That's all it took for you to what? That's all it took for you, bro? You sound like the girls that be watching Love Island and that girl Olandria. Olandria and the white man. Oh, man. Listen, you sound like a girl that watched Love Island and be talking about dating a white man, brother. You sound goofy. Oh, my God. His daughter was dating a black guy. Oh, my God. I hope you're not a black man, brother. I really hope you're like some white guy trying to preach to me. I really hope you're not a black man because that'd be very disappointing. But anyways, I want to get into some segments of this article that I read entitled An African Woman's Open Letter to Melinda Gates. I believe this article was written by a Nigerian personality, Obianuju Ike-Ocha. I think I said it right. Anyways, she said this. So, a few weeks ago, I stumbled upon the plan and promise of Melinda Gates to implant the seeds of her legacy in 69 of the poorest countries in the world, most of which in sub-Saharan Africa. Her pledge is to collect pledges of almost $5 billion in order to ensure that the African woman is less fertile, less encumbered, and as she says, liberated. With her incredible wealth, she wants to replace the legacy of the African woman, which is her child, with the legacy of child-free sex. And of course, there are bound to be inconsistencies and failures in the use of these drugs and devices, so health complications could result, one of which is unintended abortion. Add also other health risks like cancer, blood clots. Where Europe and America have their well-oiled healthcare system, a woman in Africa with a contraception-induced blood clot does not have access to 911 or an ambulance or a paramedic. No, she dies. Yes, again, like I said, this is a blood transfusion for a patient that has walked into the hospital with internal bleeding. If any doctor made this diagnosis, we would say you are a janky doctor, you're a grifter, you probably scammed for your medical license, and we need to call the authorities. But when these Western policy advisors, when these Western technocrats come along with the same janky idea, we have Negroes like, yeah, man, the intelligent white man. And that lady made an excellent point. And that goes back to what I said. They just want a cheap fix so they can continue with the pillage. That's it. They just want a cheap fix instead of getting to the root of the issue. Because like I said, it's much easier to exert influence over a continent of 500 million, aging, older people instead of a vibrant population of 2, 3, 4 billion young, vibrant. The average age is 25 and they're eating natural foods and they're ready to go. They're ready to work. They're ready to fight. It's much easier to exert influence over a bunch of aging people suffering from side effects from pharmaceutical drugs instead of a booming population ready to work and ready to defend themselves. You tell me, what do you think is a more formidable opponent? An aging, declining population or a young, booming population full of young military-age men, able-bodied men and able-bodied women? And I really love that she mentioned the complications and side effects, because if you're going to continue to extract the raw materials for cheap and continue to exploit the continent and continue to benefit off the lack of industrialization, then of course the women are not going to have access to the state-of-the-art luxuries and amenities of a first-class healthcare system. So when they get these side effects, when they get these blood clots, who are they going to turn to? Where are they going to go, right? Because you did not really truly empower them. Instead, you handicapped them with charity and subsidies. And that's so real, because I remember back in 2017, I suffered from a pulmonary embolism. I had a blood clot in one of my pulmonary arteries. Now, of course, due to the fact that I had access to a first-class medical system that was made possible due to the pillage of Africa, right? I was able to get treatment quickly, and I'm still here. I'm living. It's all good. I had a cousin around the exact same time in Port-au-Prince down in Haiti, suffered from the exact same thing, pulmonary embolism. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. So like I said, man, we got to have more foresight when we are dealing with the adversary, right? We can't just be falling for these, short-term grifts. Oh, instead of getting to the root of the issue, which is, like I said, stopping the internal bleeding, take this blood transfusion instead, right? And then we are being made to believe that we do not have enough resources to feed and sustain our children. What? No, the reason why they make you believe that is because they want to continue pillaging and bringing it back for their children, as you can see in the photo, right? So they turn around and tell you, see, the real issue is not the fact that we are, carting off your resources back to our table. The real issue is you have too many kids at your table. So what you need to do is eliminate those kids off your table so we can continue eating good, right? We're going to continue pillaging and extracting, but what you need to do is eliminate the kids off your table so your table can be damn near empty, and I'm going to keep boosting up my table, and I'm going to keep eating steak and rice, and you're going to be over there, suffering and living a miserable existence, right? And anytime somebody comes around and tries to fix the problem, I'm going to eliminate that guy too. We're going to kill him too. That's the mentality. So in summary, man, like I said, we have an abundance at our table. Our table is rich and abundant. It's overflowing, as you can see. But unfortunately, there are certain individuals, there are certain nations that are coveting what we possess, right? So they want to drag that abundance off of our table and stack it up on their table, right? And at the same time, they don't want us coming over to their table. See, coming over the border. They don't want us coming over their table and eating at their table, right? But they also want to take what's at our table and bring it back to their table, right? They don't even want us at their table. That's the crazy part, right? Now, they'll take the black woman and put her in their bed, but they don't even want her at the table either. They definitely don't want the black man at the table. They don't want the black woman at the table, but they'll have her in the bed, and that's about it. That's about it, right? So they're trying to sell us blood transfusions instead of actually clamping down on the internal bleeding and stopping the artery from bursting. These are some janky doctors with a bunch of janky diagnosis. And, thankfully for me, I come from a medical family, so I can examine these situations in a logical manner, right? As if I'm a doctor treating a patient and giving a diagnosis and a treatment. But anyways, man, it's your boy Neferkari, that's Salim back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. Brand new single off the next project. Second single, The Spy in Bamako. Pin comment at the top, link in the description. Check it out. Fire. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD1814, and I'm gone. Peace.
Feel like it's see me, I feel like I'm Saudi or ran up on Yana in the middle of Bamako. Enemy line, they claiming they innocent. Don't do no talking, I gotta move militant. Don't do no talking, I hit them with facts. 1804, bringing it back. 1804 like I'm Mother Cap Henry. King with the vision, the crown never empty. Top of the mountain, my soldiers defend me. Ducking and dodging the fall and intelligence. Hitting my dance on the DGSE. Dodging they traps, still on my feet. Feeling impeccable, feel like I'm shining. Go to my neck and I'm flooded with diamonds. Go to my neck and I feel like a mess. Feel like a lion, I'm in the savannah. Feel like the king when I'm up in the jungle. Never defeated, I never been humble. Come out victorious every encounter. Money machine give me help when I count it. Money machine stack it up in a beat. Heart of a king and I ride for the team. Weight of the world got it stuck on my shoulders. Bet you can feel it, my heart getting colder. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison. Hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison. Hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater.